welcome to Music for Podcasts. I'm just going to check in with Sarah, make sure everything's fine. She says we can start. Fantastic. So welcome to our session this evening called Music for Podcasts. Really glad that you can join us today. So we're just going to be talking through a few things to do with music and podcasting. So stand by. Hopefully there'll be no technical issues. Okay. So before we wanted to start, I just wanted for us to introduce ourselves. So my name is Pip Jones. I'm a travel writer, host of the Travel Goals podcast, and a co-owner of a music library called Clearwave Music.
I'm Luke Jones, and I'm a music and audio producer. I've recently started producing podcasts, mainly Travel Goals podcast with Pip and some other podcasts. And I'm also an owner of the music library Clearwave Music.
Okay, guys, so some of the topics in our quite short and concise presentation are going to be publishing rights, sound recording rights, fair use, what music can I use, commissioned music, and library music. So using music in podcasts. Let me just minimize that screen. Cool. So when you use music in any audiovisual production, there are two sets of rights that you need to take into account: the publishing rights and the sound recording rights. Screen. So first of all, we're going to dive into the publishing rights and why it matters for podcasting. So Luke, tell us a little bit more about publishing rights and why they actually matter to podcasters.
So publishing rights belong to the composer of a piece of music. As soon as a composer composes a piece of music, they own the publishing rights to that music. And with that comes the ability to collect money for the use of that music, as well as having a say over what that music would be used for. Often professional composers hire publishing companies to represent to handle administration of the music usage, just because composers don't want to spend all day on the phone to people answering questions about what their music can and can't be used on and negotiating fees. So they would hire a publishing company to do that, and then in return for that, the publishing company would generally take a percentage of the royalty income stream, usually about 50%.
So basically, guys, if you want to use a piece of music on your podcast, you'll need to contact the publisher of that music in order to gain permission. This may also involve you paying a fee to the publisher and composer in return for the right to use that music. So now on to sound recording rights and why they matter. So Luke, tell us a little bit more about sound recording rights and why they matter for podcasters.
So the sound recording rights are the rights to the particular recording of the music. So if a person writes a song, they own the publishing rights. But when a record label records a version of the song, then the record label would own the sound recording rights to that particular recording. If there's no record label involved, that is to say, somebody writes a piece of music and records it themselves, then they would be viewed as owning the sound recording rights. It's generally whoever had financed the recording of the particular piece of recording would own the sound recording rights.
So just to clarify, sound recording rights. If the music has not been formally released or made available for purchase by the general public, then the sound recording rights belong to whoever financed the recording. Mechanical copy. Using a piece of music in your podcast is, in legal terms, seen as creating a mechanical copy of the music. This then generates a synchronization fee that is owed to the owner of the sound recording. So to clarify and to conclude, if you want to use a piece of existing music in your podcast, you'll need to contact the owners of the publishing and the sound recording rights to obtain the permissions and then negotiate a fee for that usage. This can be a little bit time-consuming, expensive, and sometimes a bit difficult, but we'll kind of dive on into that a little bit more now. So one thing we really wanted to address was the fair use issue, which is maybe a phrase you've heard thrown around in terms of like podcasts or YouTube videos, that kind of stuff. So we just wanted to take a little bit of a look into fair use and how it can affect you as a podcaster. So we're going to be looking at things like, what is the fair use issue? Can I use music and not pay for it? And do I need permission to use music? Okay, so in terms of fair use, podcasters who wish to use existing music online or in a podcast, but don't wish to pay for it or obtain permission from the copyright holders, kind of often cite this fair use thing as a kind of get out of jail free card. Be really careful with this, guys. It's possible that this phrase doesn't actually mean what you think it does. So some of the common fair use myths I've come across online in podcasting groups, at conferences, etc., are things like this. I can use any music if I'm not making money from it. It's okay if I play less than 10 seconds. As long as I provide attribution, the artist will understand. I can use any music under fair use. As long as I use no copyright infringement intended, it's fine. So Luke, as someone who deals with music a lot, tell us a little bit about fair use and how it relates to podcasts.
Well, fair use is not really what a lot of people think it is. For a start, the title fair use leads a lot of people to think that it means it's fair for them to use music. That's not what it means at all. I mean, before you would ever use a piece of music and then try and claim that it was fair use, you should talk to a lawyer and make sure that the lawyer can confirm that the way you're using the music is fair use. Because if you're just using a piece of music in a podcast that's created for entertainment purposes, that almost certainly does not constitute fair use, and you will have infringed copyright.
So to lead on from that, profit doesn't actually matter when it comes to using copyright music, you see. Here's a good rule of thumb. If your podcast is created solely for entertainment purposes, using a piece of copyright music in your podcast almost certainly doesn't constitute fair use. Whether your podcast does or does not generate any profit has absolutely no bearing on the situation. Creating a mechanical copy of a piece of music without the permission of the copyright holder will constitute copyright infringement. Guys, fair use is not going to cover you against this. So to give you an example, say I had a dating podcast and I thought, ooh, wouldn't it be fun to use Beyonce's All the Single Ladies as my intro music? Can I use Beyonce as my intro music?
No, not under fair use, no.
So what if I only use 10 seconds of it?
Still not fair use, no.
But my podcast doesn't make any money.
Doesn't affect fair use at all.
You can see what we're getting at, guys. Like, you need to think really carefully about using any copyrighted material. Always talk to a legal professional as well, not just some person on a Facebook podcast group, okay? Get proper legal advice. We cannot stress this enough to you. So in conclusion on the fair use issue, to avoid any legal headaches and potentially expensive fees and settlements, you'll need to make sure you have explicit permission from the copyright holder to use any kind of copyright music, okay? So leading on from fair use and copyright and all that kind of stuff, we go to, well, what music can I use in my podcast? So there's a few different types of music you can use in your podcast, and we're just covering some of them here. So you've got commissioned music, and this means hiring someone to write, produce, and record the music for you. You've got royalty-free music. There are sites where you can purchase royalty-free music for use. One of the most popular is Audio Jungle. And then we've got library music. Music that's owned by a music library is available for use at the rate set by the MCPS. So commission music. This generally means hiring someone to write, produce, and record the music for you. Instead of having to pay a synchronization fee, you would simply pay the music composer a one-off fee for the composition that is then yours to use. A lot of professional podcasters actually commission their intro, outro music because, you know, it sounds kind of good and kind of professional when you have commissioned music that's high quality. So Luke, as someone who does a lot of commission music for podcasts, including mine and other podcasts, and indeed for other audiovisual projects. Tell us a little bit about commissioned music and how people can use it on their podcasts.
The benefit of using commissioned music for your podcast is that you don't have to worry about any of these clearing copyrights, gaining permission, paying sync fees to people. If you commission someone to write music for you, then under the understanding that you are entering into, the composer is being compensated for the use of their music. The way that the arrangement works would be entirely up to you and the composer. You would need to discuss exactly what it is that you're arranging. I mean, presumably if you're commissioning the music, you're having an input on what the music's going to sound like, which is one of the main benefits. You can say, I would like the music to sound like this, and then the composer would then compose music that fit the brief that you'd given them. And so it's likely that in that scenario, you would be commissioning the music to be used exclusively for your podcast, but you might find the composer then wants to be paid slightly more if that's the case, because they're not just charging you a fee for using their music, they're also charging you a fee for creating the music and then you having exclusivity over it. Another thing that might crop up is who's going to own the publishing rights on the piece of music that's being created. It may be the case that you would be paying the composer and in return you would want half the publishing rights. In real terms, though, there's no need for you to own publishing rights if you're just commissioning someone to write music for your podcast. It would cost you more money and it would not be that beneficial. Overall, you need to have a written agreement stipulating exactly what it is you're paying the composer for and what they're agreeing to let you do in return for that money.
I can confirm, so Luke did the commission music for my podcast, Travel Goals, and it sounds really good. As he said, one of the benefits is that you can ask for music that's kind of within the tone and the feel of your podcast that's really highly personal to, you know, your podcast and your output. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer having high quality commissioned music for my podcast that kind of really set the tone and the branding and everything else. So if you are looking for that really super slick, polished look, I would really recommend commissioning music for your podcast, especially in terms of intro, outro music, because I think that will help set you apart and just give you a really sort of like nice professionally sounding podcast, to be honest. Just to kind of like go back to the agreement thing, as Luke said, make sure whoever commissions your music, even if it's like your friend who's in a local band or anything like that, your kind of mates, doesn't matter, make sure you get an agreement. The terms of the arrangement you make with a music composer for your podcast is kind of up to you in a lot of ways, but it is really important that you get something in writing to clarify the agreement for the sake of both parties. So now we'll talk a little bit about royalty-free music, which a lot of you might already be familiar with. You can purchase royalty-free music to use in your podcasts from sites such as Audio Jungle for quite a low cost. Note though that royalty-free doesn't necessarily mean that the license itself is free, it's just that you won't pay royalties for using it. Another thing to bear in mind is sometimes the quality of these like royalty-free tracks can vary hugely. So you might need to do a little bit of sifting through the site, that kind of thing. So Luke, tell us a little bit more about royalty-free music and how people can use royalty-free music on their podcasts.
The royalty-free music companies tend to have websites with lots and lots of music on, lots of search functions as well. So you can search for music via mood or style or genre or whatever words you want to put into the search function to see what comes up. And you would then be given a lot of options of different pieces of music which you can preview. And when you find a piece of music that you want, it would have a clearly displayed cost for the use of that music and probably an explanation as to what that usage would involve. And the beauty of this site is that you can just go straight to this website and find the music you want and pay the company directly for the use of the music. We've mentioned Audio Jungle because it's one of the more famous, more well-known companies. There are lots of other companies as well. And the important thing is that the deals that they offer you may vary. So it's important when you do use one of these sites to quickly read the terms and conditions to make sure that you are paying for what you think you're paying for.
Definitely, that's really important. So the things you need to know about royalty-free music: read the terms and conditions, as Luke said. Whenever you're buying music off royalty-free sites, make sure that you fully understand what the site's music standard license grants you when purchasing royalty-free music. You know, it's actually a really, really important thing to kind of wrap your head around, so you know exactly what you're paying for, what the license is, what you can and can't do with it, okay? In terms of theme tune music, for a podcast theme tune, you'll likely need something like a lifetime license, because obviously the theme tune gets played over and over again. Check as well when you're sort of in this area if there's any cap on the number of downloads and the length of time that the license covers. This is really important. Relates back to the T's and C's, so just have a really firm understanding, especially if it's to do with theme music, as to what you're buying and what it covers you for, all that kind of stuff. In terms of subscriptions, if you're going to be using a lot of music, loops and sound effects in your podcast, you might want to consider paying for a royalty-free music subscription service as opposed to just doing one-off tracks, because it will mean that you'll have access to a lot more kind of music, you know, for a monthly fee. So that's definitely something you can look into. So now we are on to library music. So library music is also known as production music, and it's music created specifically for use in audiovisual productions and media. In the UK, music owned by a music library is available for use at the rates set by the MCPS, which is the Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. Okay, so Luke, tell us a little bit about library music and how people can use it in their podcast if they want to.
The library music model is similar to the royalty-free music models. Library music predates it, though. It's from an earlier point in time. The royalty-free companies sprang up when the internet happened, really, because they were seeing more and more people making their own productions and wanting very low fees to pay to get access to music. You mentioned how the variety of quality on royalty-free websites can vary. Very often the cheapest pieces of music are quite affordable, and then they get more and more expensive as you get higher and higher quality. Because library music predates the internet, most music libraries were focusing at TV production, radio production, advertising, where the budgets are a lot higher. So you can still use library music in your podcast productions. It's a slightly different model, though. You would go to the website of the library. You can search on the website until you find a piece of music you're happy with. And when you find a piece of music, instead of contacting the library, you would contact the MCPS, the Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. This is because you don't need to get permission from the library. The libraries have already granted permission for usage. You just need to pay the fee to the MCPS, who would collect the money and then distribute it to the music library, which sounds a bit complicated, but it really isn't. Most music libraries that are MCPS registered will have in their contact sections links to the MCPS website, which is also part of the PRS Alliance. So it would be, you can go to the website, the MCPS website, and see the fees charged as set by their rate card. And then there would be a phone number there you could call and just make the arrangements with the people in one simple phone call. And the benefits of using library music is that it's not actually much more, it's usually about the same sort of price as the high quality royalty-free websites are charging. But also the MCPS can offer you kind of discounts and negotiated rates for if you're going to use the music in longevity. If you want to use, for example, the same piece of music for a whole podcast series, you might be able to get it a lot cheaper than you would on some of the royalty-free sites.
So what you need to know about library music. As stated, library music tends to be high quality music. This is because library music is a curated source of music that has a much higher quality control than royalty-free sites. As Luke said as well, you can also negotiate. So you can negotiate podcast and online series deals directly with MCPS. And it's affordable. Library music actually isn't anywhere near as expensive as you might imagine. And as Luke said, the royalty-free music, the higher the quality, generally the price goes up anyway. So,
yes,
you know. And the thing is, library music can be really good if you're a professional podcaster and you want your music to sound very high quality, or perhaps you're producing podcasts for clients. Again, they've got some budget, they want some really high quality, nice music. Certainly we've supplied library music to various podcasts and stuff, because they are looking for that professional edge and that real high quality stuff. So it's definitely something to kind of consider if you are more of a professional podcaster, or indeed creating podcasts for clients. So this is our music library here, Clearwave Music. So just to clarify as well, how it would work is, say I went to Clearwave and I was searching through the different genres and albums and all the different music that we have, and I stumble across something and I'm like, oh, I really like that indie pop track. So just to clarify, what would I do? I found a track I like on a music library. What would I then do?
If you click into the contact section, it would give you, it would give you the opportunity. Most music libraries use similar formats. In the contact section, there would be the ability to contact the library if you wanted to, but you don't need to. You want to contact the MCPS, there'd be a link to the MCPS website, and it would click through to probably to the rate card, which would then offer you a phone number that you can ring and directly license or negotiate what it is that you want from someone who works at MCPS, who'll be able to talk you through the cost and what the usage, what sort of usage you can have for that cost.
Fantastic. Okay, so if you have any questions about music for podcasts, or how you can use library music or commission music or anything like that, if you prefer to get in touch with us on social, you can do on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Links are there, and I'm sure you can check back, because I understand this presentation's going to be available after the festival ends. So those are our social details there. You can also check out our website, which is Clearwave Music, and that's clearwavemusic.com, or email info@clearwavemusic.com. And if you want an example of what commissioned music sounds like for your intro and outro, why not check out my podcast, Travel Goals, and you can hear what commissioned music sounds like as well, and see what you think for yourself. If you have any questions about travel podcasting or music or anything like that, you can also reach me on Twitter. I'm at Travel Goals Pod as well. So we're pretty much at the end of our presentation now. So as I said, if you've got any questions, let us know. We can always try and help you with the music podcast stuff. So thank you very much for coming to our presentation, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.